Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Live with Dr. Dawn. I'm your host, Dr. Dawn 𝗲𝗄 𝗍𝗏, double-board child adolescent and adult psychiatrist. I'm a two-time best-selling author, podcaster, public speaker, media influencer. I'm the sole practitioner at 𝗍𝗄 Wellness Center in Houston, Texas, and soon to be CEO of a new corporation company that I'm developing specifically for elite athletes. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. As you know, if you are accustomed to coming to Live with Dr. Dawn, please, you know what I'm going to ask, share this live with at least 2 people you know. Let them know to be in the room. You know, this is an interesting topic that we actually have embarked upon that, for professional elite athletes. And what better place you can be to hear right from those who were former professional NFL players. And we have tonight 2 NFL players that will be joining me this evening. We have Justin Brown and Rennie Curran, and we definitely want to make sure that your questions are heard. So they're here to answer your questions. But there are 3 specific topics we're going to cover tonight. And this is part 2. So I really want to thank the guys for joining me for another part 2. Again, please go ahead and make sure that you join. And I appreciate, hi, Kalada. Hi, Katharina. Thanks so much for joining. Thank you. I don't know, congratulations. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks so much for joining the broadcast. And again, just go ahead and invite people that you know need to be here. All right. So without further ado, I'm actually going to invite into the room Justin Brown and Rennie Curran. And I thank you guys for joining me again for part 2 of this Live with Dr. Dawn.
Thanks for having us again.
No problem. Yeah, glad to be back on again.
Thank you so much. And I know I asked, but how was your Father's Day yesterday? Did you all have a good time with your children?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I'll let Jessica. Yeah, mine was great as well. Ate good, spent really good quality time with the family and everything. So yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, likewise. They ate a little bit too much.
Right.
You well deserved. I'm so happy to hear that. That's wonderful to hear. So yes, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Really do appreciate your presence and your time this evening. You know, tonight I really want to focus. I'm just going to get right to it because I know that time goes fast and there were so many things that we didn't get to last time. But the first question that I really would like to ask you all is in realm of just kind of the happenings over the past few weeks. We know that professional athletes have a very special platform, and they actually have a powerful platform right now in the sense where they're being heard. It's not like they weren't talking before, but many of them are, especially within the NBA and NFL and LB and NASCAR as well. You know, many are coming forward and basically giving their, their perspective about what's going on and having their ideas presented and before them, knowing they have, power in the place to where they can actually make change happen. I want to just get your perspective on the last couple of weeks. How have you all been, what is your perspective on the last few weeks, first of all? And secondly, what are your thoughts about, how the players are going about this? And I know I'm summing all these players in one lump sum, but we can definitely, talk about them specifically.
Do you want to go first?
Rennie, go first, Rennie.
Yeah, so I mean, when I think about just as a player, as an athlete, and everything that's going on right now, it doesn't surprise me to see guys are speaking up and really sharing their thoughts and leveraging their platform. This is a theme that you've seen throughout our history, especially as African American athletes. Like when you think about guys like Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Jesse Owens, there's so many athletes throughout our history who have used their platform to transcend just being an athlete, just being an entertainer, and really being able to reach the masses and being able to reach those who a lot of times wouldn't listen. And we all know that sports brings people together, and it's a tool that we've been able to use to really infiltrate different areas of society. Like I said, where a lot of times we get shut down, and there are those people who say, the sayings that just shut up and dribble. But I feel like more than ever, there's so many of us who are defying that and who know our worth and who know that, we can bring so much more to the world than just tackling somebody or dribbling or, making plays on a Saturday or on a Sunday. So for me, I've definitely, while I was playing, since I've been done now, it's even more important to me to really use my voice to really speak up because I realize it's not about me, like it's bigger than me. So I have nephews. I one day plan on having a future son. And for me, it's like at the point where if I don't speak up, I'm giving it permission to exist for them. And that's how I look at it. So I look at it like it's on me to really do whatever I can to make sure that these type of instances never happen again. Like what happened with Ahmaud Arbery, what happened with George Floyd, like that, these things are, they never ever happen to anybody else that looks like me. And it starts with me. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm whether it's social media, whether it's going out marching, whether it's having the conversations with people who don't look like me, I'm doing everything that I can in my own weak way to just create that change. And it doesn't happen overnight, but you just got to plant those seeds.
Yeah. I mean, same thing with Rennie was saying. I can piggyback off what he just said. I mean, it's not like these situations haven't been happening the past couple of years, but I think right now what makes, the past couple of weeks or the past month different is the fact that like the whole world has stopped. So now, everybody has been able to, watch and kind of get the information and have time to do the research and understand the history. But the same thing that Rennie was saying, now I just think it's on each athlete, to do their part, whether you're current, whether you're, retired, whether you're, a young aspiring, student athlete, start to really educate yourself, start to be able to, speak up, and make your voice heard, make your concerns heard and bring awareness to, maybe the group of people that might not be able to understand or to kind of, spark those conversations. So I think going forward, it's definitely going to come down to the athlete, each athlete singularly just, kind of doing their own part going forward.
I definitely agree. What are your thoughts on kind of how the NBA players are somewhat divided on how to approach this topic? I can understand both views. The concern that I have is that there's really not an identified plan that has been revealed. Of course, there may be, and I'm just not aware of it. But I would love to, for them to come together collectively and come as a powerful force and having, a specific plan if that could happen. What are your views on how they're going about it? And do you have any perspective on this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when it comes to just players choosing to speak up and not, I think it really represents just kind of the overall picture that we see within our community and with a lot of people. There's people right now who choosing to act like, their catchphrase is all lives matter. They take that approach and just kind of avoid everything going on and stay in their little bubble. And then there are those who are bothered, who are convicted and who choose to speak up. So I think with any group, whether it's athletes or whether it's in the corporate world with, business people and people who are going about their daily lives, you're going to have those who choose to not necessarily ruffle the feathers and just stick to the status quo and those who rise to the occasion. And more than ever, it's like people are really being challenged on their values and what they really stand for. You look at even the church community. I mean, people who say that they really, they want to love their neighbor. Like, now's the time where you really are challenged on those different beliefs that you say you have and those things that you really say you stand for. So yes, it's unfortunate to see, those athletes who aren't necessarily on the same page, who want to get their paycheck. But honestly, that's the reality. That's the world that we live in. It was the same way when Muhammad Ali was doing his thing and speaking up against different injustices. There were guys who wanted to just be entertainers, wanted to just be boxers. At the same time, I think a lot can be done. The more they can have a collective vision, like we talked about, having a plan, finding those commonalities, finding those areas where everybody can be on the same page. I do believe that there's strength in numbers. So I think if there's any way for them to find a way for everybody to like collectively get behind a certain cause or a certain initiative or a certain bill, whatever it is, I think that could be that way that they can really affect change. And not everybody's a vocal person. That's what we got to realize too. Some people are introverted. For some people, they're doing that work within their own little small community or in their family, and that's as far as they're going to go. Some people are, they're more externally driven. They're going to be out on social media recording the videos and doing their thing. So I think we have to give people grace to be able to express and provide that impact in the way that they know how to do it. And I think that's not talked about a lot, because you can make impact in so many different ways. It can be by mentoring somebody. It doesn't always have to be out in the public spotlight and everything. It can be donating, showing that support. It can be encouraging another person who is out in the front lines and that's something you don't hear about a lot. Who was supporting Martin Luther King and all these different people? They needed somebody to support them monetarily and support them mentally, and the prayer warriors behind them to protect them from a spiritual standpoint. So all those aspects are important. It takes a village.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say on that, those are some great points. The fact that I think over the last couple of weeks, and I haven't been really following too much as far as with the NBA, but I think just from some of the things that I've heard, as far as going back and forth between some of the current players or maybe some of the players that, are former players and commentators now. So one thing that I don't like to see is the fact that it's like, not only is it divided, but then when you start to see people start to take those personal shots, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think and sometimes, you have people that are very opinionated, right? And you're athletes, right? So strong opinionated, but then I think sometimes when you start to take those personal shots and you take the light off of actually what the cause is at hand, right? So I think just finding a way to, even though you disagree, maybe you have strong stances, but still staying focused on what it is you're trying to accomplish, right? And then at the same time, like Rennie was talking about, understanding that, some people speak, some people voice their opinions differently, right? Like you were saying, some people are, extroverted, so they might be the ones that weren't going to be right on the front line, right? Some people might be more so introverted, but that might not mean that they're not out there making posts, right? They're not out there writing articles or out there voicing their opinions that way, right? Some people, like you said, were just the ones that want to support, right? And just they want to support for the Martin Luther Kings, for the ones that are out there. So I think, like you were saying, being able to just extend that grace to allow people to express themselves or to voice their opinions about what's going on, right? The best way that's more natural to them. Because I think another thing that I've seen, and this is not even just in athletics, just people like this whole term of now, like you being canceled. You know what I mean? Like the fact that if you don't, if you're not expressing, yourself the way that other people think you should, now you're automatically canceled. And I even saw someone, that I know is in the community. Like I've seen this individual with my own eyes. I see what they do. I see what they do behind the scenes and how they don't voice it. And because they hadn't said anything, it was like I saw people commenting like, "Oh, you're canceled, you're canceled," and I'm like, he has probably done way more than you actually did. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you're emotional. You're seeing it from what is he doing on social media instead of what the actual work is going on. So I think that even though people are very opinionated, I think that sometimes, when we start to put our expectations on how people should express themselves, then we start to lose sight of the actual mission or the cause at hand. So I think going forward, as long as we can continue to kind of keep that the main thing, and then of course coming up with strategic plans to be able to move forward until certain things and certain laws and get past the changes, is going to take some time. Like we talked about last time. What are we going to be doing now individually collectively to kind of push things forward.
Exactly. I think that both of you made some outstanding points. You know, Rennie, the things that really stuck out to me was a supportive team that you commonly don't see. And a lot of these supportive teams can be the players, for example, in pushing forward initiatives, maybe driven by financial support, physical support for their family members. Who knows if they are experiencing triggers and have been affected by this, or impacted by this in a negative way. I know, you know, a couple players that have been impacted by this in negative ways. And so they're trying to get their own support and help. And so those are very, very valuable points. And then with Justin, you know, what's interesting is that players are in an interesting position because it's the expectation for some fans or some entities to believe that your platform becomes political, becomes global, becomes a part of a movement, becomes, you know, all these things. And although we recognize the power that, you know, just professional athletes have because it's America's favorite pastimes, right? That's how we deal with our stress. It's like those projections on you also become an issue. And you're exactly right. I see it in with commentators, interviews, players back and forth when asking questions. Instead of asking about the topic or focusing on that, you're exactly right. I have been seeing that especially for the past couple of weeks. Those have been the hot topics. You know, this response to this player, instead of the initiative and what's going on, and the ironic nature that two pandemics are going on at once, and they're going in the same direction. And so because of COVID, we can talk about these things because we're made to sit back and sit with it and discuss it. And because racism is going on, and it's always been going on, people are still forced to make these changes. So it's interesting about this type of climate that's happening. Yes. Do you all believe that it's possible for those who are vocal, those who are wanting to be leaders of the movement and trying to get, you know, changes done, especially within being a Black athlete in the NBA and NFL? Is it possible for professional leagues to come to, or players of professional leagues to come together and have this initiative brought forward? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you already see a lot of forms of it, whether it's videos, whether it's challenges that have been created, whether it's initiatives that have been created. I've seen athletes being a part of some of the, even I saw 𝗿𝗏 a part of one of the announcements made for one of the police officers that were convicted. So athletes are definitely getting involved. I mean, collectively, I think there can always be more that's done for, you know, for the basketball guys to come together with football guys and tennis and everybody. I mean, I think that would be really awesome to see. But at the end of the day, everybody's giving their own collective effort. And as you said eloquently, I mean, people are some of us are still dealing with the trauma and really trying to just cope with everything that's going on at the same time. So that's, sometimes I want to respond. Sometimes I want to get that person right on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, that ignorant person who's saying something that's ridiculous, but I'm just like so exhausted. So it's a lot. And I think about all those people, all of us who have faced racial profiling and bias and just so much since we were young. I mean, I tell people all the time, my first experience with racism was 8 years old. And you know, I'm sure you all have your similar stories and whatnot, but at the same time, you know, there are a lot of things, great things that are happening. We see the change that is happening. It's of course not going to happen at the pace that we wanted to, but we just have to continue to keep that foot on the gas. And somebody, I see Erica, she mentioned what our thoughts on solidarity shown in NASCAR, and I think it's great. I mean, I think it's awesome to see the solidarity that they're displaying, but we all know that acts of solidarity can just be that. It can just be an act, right? What are they going to really do to keep their foot on the gas, to keep planting the seeds, to keep spreading that message? Is it just as simple as removing a flag? Or are they really going to do more to create that inclusive environment like they say they want to? Are they going to create an initiative to, you know, go into the inner cities and in different areas that they don't normally reach and try to create a lane for getting more than one NASCAR driver, you know, that's an African American? Only time will tell. So I think it's a great sign, but right now, that's all it is. It's just a sign, but there's no real meat behind it. I mean, to be honest, I think there's a lot more work in areas of growth in that, especially when it comes to NASCAR and many other sports.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just say, as far as, you know, just sticking to the solidarity piece and you know, different sports coming together. I mean, that would be, like you said, I'm sure there's a lot of things in the works right now. I haven't really been tracking it, like I said, recently. But it would just be more beneficial to the cause, you know, to get different sports, you know, have taken one stance and pretty much saying, you know, their struggle is our struggle. We want to bring all the owners of all sports teams. You know, that would be something major, you know, just to kind of make sure, you know, going forward, you know, this is going to be the tone set, since we do understand our position as athletes, you know, as all sports teams in America. This is the tone that we're going to set, owners we're bringing to the table. And even if you would be able to see it trickle down to, you know, collegiate sports, right? Because now you're starting to see even more of them have a voice. And that's only going to allow them to have even more of a greater voice as they transition into professional sports. So, yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely would be great to continue to see, you know, different sports, you know, major athletes continue to collaborate, start initiatives, like you were saying, you know, having some of those sports that, you know, like NASCAR, going to the inner cities and get those kids exposed. That's also going to be, you know, very, very important to, you know, kind of changing that tone, right? Allowing some of those kids to go and get exposure to playing golf, right? Exposure to playing tennis. Some of those sports that they might not have been exposed to. I think that can help bridge the gap as well.
And one thing you hit on too, I'll just piggyback off that. You mentioned the owners.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge area of growth that I want to see more of. Is just them speaking up. Like, a lot of these owners of teams have been completely silent. And even some of the coaches, I mean, some of them may make one statement and that's kind of it. But what are the coaches really doing, and leaders as a whole? And I think I truly believe if you're in that position where you so-called leading a lot of African American, you know, whoever, you know, African Americans, whoever are affected by certain societal issues, you can't just be silent. You can't on one day saying, "Oh, we a family, we got to fight for each other, we got to," you know, but you can't be pushing this certain culture just in between the walls and on Saturdays and Sundays, and then when it comes to their real life, like everything else that goes on outside of that jersey or outside of that work environment, you completely act like it doesn't exist. To me, it's not genuine at all. And you mentioned creating those diverse programs and really reaching kids. I think so much more needs to be done besides just giving them the exposure to that individual sport. Even with NASCAR, like, what about the person who does the pit and changes the tires, and the person who does the marketing and the sponsorship and all those different pieces of the actual business of sports? That's where, even when you see the NFL and how it's mostly African American, when you go into the corporate side and the business side, no diversity.
Where are we?
Where are we represented in the ownership, in the GMs, in the player personnel departments and whatnot? That's where the true change really needs to happen, and it starts at the top.
Yeah, that's big.
Do you think that these should be a few demands that should be made by professional athletes who actually make up 80% of the NBA and 70% of the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, because I know, Rennie, I'm sure you're familiar with the Rooney Rule, right? As far as, you know, as far as that should be extended throughout all front office positions. You know what I'm saying? Like, that shouldn't just be for head coach. That should be for GM. That should be for the marketing manager. That should be for PR. That should be for every position. If you're really trying to see that change, you know, with the you know, the ratio as far as with the people that are actually playing, like as far as the black athletes that are actually playing, you want to see that ratio, you know, in the front office, then you have to kind of open up that rule for every position, right? So, I mean, that's just kind of my take on it.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And it's so much that you don't really, like, that's not exposed to you when you're playing, man. When you're an athlete, like, we're so focused on getting on that field, making plays, getting to the paycheck, and it's survival of the fittest. So your focus goes to a certain area when you know that it's do or die, when it's me or you going home. And so in that, when you're operating in that mindset, you miss out on so many opportunities. You miss out on the person, like I said, who is like kind of out of sight, out of mind, but they making things happen. Like the person who's the media person, the person who's setting up all these sponsorship deals, who's responsible for getting all the commercials that are playing during the games, and all the when you see the little advertisements and the mascots running around, it's a lot of it is all advertising and sales. Who's behind all that? But nobody sits you down and says, these are all the other things that are happening within this business of sports that you need to pay attention to that can be opportunities. So all you think exists is just being a coach, a trainer, or an athlete. And I think, it really starts with us as athletes speaking up more. But like I said, our focus is so in tune with getting on that field, making plays, and doing what we're trained to do. So I think the more those of us who have been through it, who kind of know the system and have been exposed to it, can speak up and shed light on it, especially with the younger generation, so that they can have more consciousness and awareness, the better things will be.
And that's why I appreciate, one of the reasons I appreciate you all being here tonight, because I do know you all personally and feel that your perspectives are right on point. And you all are a tremendous number of advocates for those players who don't usually speak up for whatever reason, who actually are advocating in other ways. And I do appreciate you vocalizing your perspectives, for the greater good. And I think you mentioned a great point, Rennie, because when I think about how players can go forward, like how can we get past the protest? How can we get past the sit-outs? How can we get past, that we're going to take a knee? What is the action part to all of this? One of the big things that I think about, and I didn't think about having, of course, I think it's a great idea, is having these coaches and owners be accountable and start speaking and start talking about and collaborating, with players and going forth and having conversations and initiatives and expressing those. But I also think about the brands, brand. Like you're wearing one right now, Justin. Right? The brands that we see that not focus on how you all should be wearing the headband on the NBA or what cleats you can wear, what not wear on the NFL on the field. But who is sponsoring these cleats? Who's sponsoring all of these things that you all are doing? Because they definitely have a voice. And, I think that if anything, they should definitely be collaborating with the players that they've signed.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I totally agree. The Jordans, the Nikes, and like I said, they're all kind of doing their own form of support in different ways. But there's always more that can be done, especially from just a vocal standpoint. From that, it just means so much when you see that CEO that's out there and just using his voice, using his platform. And like you said, the players who are backed by these brands, getting into the community, getting their hands dirty. If they're going to profit off of us, they should be willing to, like I said, get out there and get active as well, especially with everything that our communities are going through.
Yes. I know that every player has a different experience when you're playing during your active seasons. The question has come up in different ways about Drew Brees, and I know I'm not going to actually focus on him because he's not here. We don't know. We don't know his perspective. All we know is that he is born and raised in New Orleans, right? Plays with, the Saints for many years. He's one of the top players. He is the top quarterback currently. He makes, more money than anyone else right now as of 2019. What are your thoughts about his perspective? Because I was a former Brees fan. And I say former because I do believe that if a person is an advocate for communities, especially African-American communities, a person that, spends a lot of money in these communities, my expectation that he's also spending a lot of time getting to know the people he's serving and the people that he's blessing. And also with players, his co-players, right? His team. And the brotherhood that he often calls it. And my question to Brees would be, what is your definition of brotherhood? Because my concern is that, are you actually getting to know your brothers on the team? Do you have these type of conversations, especially in light of what's happened already, with Katrina, with racism from way back. And even when your difference was, you had a difference of opinion with Cap took the knee, and you still do. And so, my question to you all is, part of questions that received is, do you spend time together when you are players? Do you get to know one another? Are these type of questions that you do have, particularly because the league is 70% Black African American? I mean, are these topics being discussed openly?
Man, I'll say this. I mean, you can only at the professional level, you can only get to know your teammates so much, because I mean, look at these rosters. When you look at these rosters, you got maybe 4 or 5 guys that are really like the main guys of the team, like a Drew Brees. Everybody else, they in and out. Like, it's not going to be the same team at all. So, yes, you may get to know some guys, but like I said, the turnover is so rapid. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, it's just like any work environment. You can get in kind of that mode where you just go to work, you do your job, you have meaningful conversations, but I don't really have to get to know you. Like, at the end of the day, we're there to win ball games. And it's the same thing with the coaches. You get in that environment, you have your workplace culture where it's like, we're going to fight for each other, we're family, you have all your values and whatnot. But when it comes to your personal life, that's like an option. You can choose to listen to somebody, but that don't really mean you ever like have to actually put yourself in their shoes and actually really get to truly know their emotions and how they feel. And we're talking about the game of football. The last thing you're going to talk about in the game of football is really like how you truly feel, like your emotions, what hurts you, and all these. Like, you're not about to really get fuzzy like that. It might happen after a major crisis or something, like somebody passes away or something major that happens. But overall, like, you're in that locker room, and even with the football team, as much time we spend together, we still have silos, we still have groups, we still have cliques. The offense, like the number one that comes to mind is the offensive lineman. Them jokers, like, am I lying, Jay? Like,
yeah, they're gonna stick together.
They stick together. Certain groups, and then you got the DBs. The DBs are like the trash talkers. They be doing their own thing. You got the linebackers, and you know, everybody kind of has their own personalities. So yes, you can be on that team and close knitted and whatnot, but when it comes down to it, you can very easily just kind of operate at a surface level, like just kind of have those just sayings that you say and the values that you say, the culture you try to build, and that kind of be it. But when it gets down to like rarely do teams really get to truly connect like that, and that's typically when you see those like championship caliber teams, the ones that are really truly connected, which is rare, like I said, because once you get to that level where they're performing at a high level, that means everybody's value goes up, which means some guys got to get traded. You know, they got to keep that salary cap at a certain level. So it's very tough to really connect with guys at that professional level, knowing that it's a business.
Yeah, and I think it makes it hard to, for whatever reason, to kind of, it takes more of an effort to try to learn somebody on a deeper level, right? To that degree situation, right? Like, he had multiple opportunities to learn really dig in and learn more about the culture, right? But like Rennie was saying, he didn't necessarily have to, right? He was, you know, he's contributing, you know, doing different efforts and giving back. So he feel like he's doing his part. And to where he might have or might not have a deeper relationship with somebody on the team, one of his teammates, over the, you know, 20 plus years that he's played the game from childhood. He might not have had that conversation, or he might not have thought that he had to really learn the reason why people felt like that, or the reason why things were away, right? So when you don't have those conversations, when something like this does happen, it's easy to say, you know, well, you know, I don't think that, you know, we should, you know, protest this way, because you don't understand the history behind it, and, you know, why people might feel strongly the opposite reason, right? So I think that it all starts with wanting to learn more. I think like now, and Rennie, you can chime in on this too. I think that, you know, Rachel, you know, just having people come in and speak on that tip now is going to be just required going into training camp, going into, that's going to be a different speaker now. It used to be the financial literacy. It used to be the local cop coming in talking about where to go, where not to go. Now it's going to be, we're going to have somebody talk about the racial things going on. So now that's forcing people to have that extended conversation, to where now when you do go back into the locker room, now that teammate that you might not have brought up that question, you know, they might ask it, or and I'm sure that you know, this happens all the time in the locker room. You'll start to hear a conversation about something political, something that happened on the news, and people are like, it's vocal, so people are listening, right? So now maybe people can start to have those conversations now outside the locker room when you do hang out with one of your buddies that you're close with, or like Rennie was saying, somebody in your same position. Now you can start to feel more comfortable having that conversation that doesn't look like you, but you just heard a topic brought up in the locker room that is all over the news, and you feel more comfortable. You should feel more comfortable now speaking to a teammate, right? And say, hey, let's just go get lunch, or let's just, you know, chop it up later, and we can kind of go and expand on this topic. So I think that it starts with wanting to learn at a deeper level, you know, on both sides, like trying to understand, you know, maybe why some people don't see it. And then, you know, so again, it's going to come with just trying to take the initiative out to kind of understand and dive in on a deeper level.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it was huge what the NFL did as far as admitting that their stance initially was wrong when it came to kneeling and Colin Kaepernick. And I think it's really going to open the door, like you said, for more conversations and more than just kind of those quick remedies, like Anthony said, in terms of approaching race and social justice and all those different aspects of things that need to change. And I've done a lot of work in that area. Like I work with an organization called RISE, and they focus on really teaching athletes how to be leaders and leverage their platform when it comes to racial equality and diversity inclusion and whatnot. But a lot of times, like I've been to like 10 different teams, and I work with the rookies. A lot of times it was just kind of check the box thing, go in for an hour, and that was it for the whole season. Like you talking about race, something that some of these guys have never even had a conversation about that at all, or even how to leverage, like how to see themselves beyond just athletes. And you're going to like designate an hour towards that. Yeah. And so I would go in, and then on top of that, you can't even really talk about it. I can't really post about the work that we're doing because it's so highly confidential because of the players that I'm working with. But I truly believe now it's going to be not only more of that work being done with organizations like RISE, but also they're going to be more vocal about it. They're going to really start to show like the work that these guys are doing behind the scenes to educate themselves and have those tough conversations. Because like I said, some of these kids, like people don't even understand. Some of these kids coming from Idaho or whatever, they'll tell you straight up, like I was never around black people until I got to college.
Exactly. Yep. I've heard that. You're the first black person I've ever been around. I've heard that many times. Yeah. And this is on, you know, these are guys who, so it's really, really real, the amount of work that really truly needs to be done. I think like we're still in a very highly segregated society. When you look at church on Sundays, for example, there's still so much work in progress that needs to happen. And I say that living here in Atlanta, like Atlanta, we know is like Black Mecca, but shoot, drive 20 miles in any direction outside of Atlanta, that just goes back like 30 years. No lie. Yes. All these small towns. So it's a lot of work to be done. And I think the NFL is making the right decision by really opening up that conversation and being on the right side of history. Yes, definitely. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate that, because it does beg to differ the changes that must be made, right? Like, for example, in psychiatry, I do believe that racism should be a part of our DSM-5. That is actually the criteria book that we use to help diagnose things like PTSD, because I do believe that racism can be a part of PTSD or its own separate category, where you have individuals who have gotten stopped so many times. They see themselves getting killed on TV. And of course, they're going to try to run away from you because they know that they're going to die, right? I mean, these are triggers. And so I applaud the mayor. I believe it's San Francisco, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I just saw this morning that the mayor, I believe, of San Francisco is actually pushing forth an initiative to where police officers are no longer going to answer non-emergent calls, especially when it comes to people who are not, you know, involved in any type of legalities. Oftentimes we don't talk about this, but mental health, those who have mental health concerns, and they've actually been broadcasting and in these type of situations too, when they're just not in their right mind. So they're not going to do what you expect them to do. And then you're not asking the right questions because you're not trained or you just don't care. So, you know, at the end of the day, I love that, you know, there are certain, you know, individuals in roles who can also make change, or individuals who are supporting change and being vocal about it to bring about these type of major changes that have to occur. Because at the end of the day, the expectation or the assumptions, we can't assume that people, just because you're telling them to do something, that they're going to respond the way that you expect them to respond, not understanding them or knowing who they are, their situation. You know, it requires a lot of training.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree, and I think, especially for us, I mean, as Black people, Black men, if you look anywhere near strong, you don't get that benefit of the doubt of having a bad day or having a mental breakdown. It's just not, you were resistant.
Yep.
Like, how many times have you seen that? Like, and nobody takes into account or even gives you the possibility of thinking that, man, maybe you do have a form of PTSD. Maybe you do, maybe you were locked up and that caused something like with 𝗍𝗿𝗄𝘆 that just happened. Like, people don't know what that man went through in his life that led to those actions and
Yeah.
how he responded. But automatically, this guy's a criminal, this guy's a this guy's a that. And it's really, really sad. So I think so much more, like you said, needs to be done, especially in that mental health area when it comes to dealing with us. And and how folks respond. Like, and I think that's amazing. I think more of that needs to be done. If a police officer doesn't have to convict somebody or doesn't have to lock them up, like, why should that whole situation
Why
could have
should
been
they
completely
be the
avoided?
ones to call?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Why is the emphasis so much on enforcement? Like, why is it not more so about serving and protecting? I look at that case as a perfect example. When they showed up and he was asleep or whatever, and he said, "My sister's right down the street," all they had to do was say, "We're going to impound your car. Let's call your sister,
Yep.
and she can come get you." Boom, simple. And how many other cases could have gone like that? How many lives would be saved if officers, the majority of them, had that approach? And not to say that, of course, not all bad, like they always say, but we just see so many times where small instances become big instances because of the approach. It's so focused on enforcement and getting that person to admit some type of guilt or whatever, instead of just trying to preserve life and keep it moving.
Exactly. I really want to, forgive me because I know I roll right into these conversations, but I really want you all to now introduce yourselves, let people know who you are, who weren't here last week, and actually, if you can talk a little bit about your organizations as well and their initiatives, their missions.
You go first,
Want to go first?
Yes,
all
you
right.
can go first.
So while I was playing the game of football, I ended up getting cut after my second year in the NFL, and that really drove me into starting to do work on myself. And at that point, I started reading a lot of books, started going to a lot of workshops, meeting with a lot of business leaders, and that led me to write my first book at 24. It's called Free Agent. It's all about overcoming times of adversity and times of change, and just that mental progression you go through as you learn about yourself when everything that the world has told you makes you successful is taken away. So that's where you really develop your true identity, and that's a lot of what I talk about. And from there, got into public speaking. So I speak to schools, businesses, associations on topics like leadership, team building, diversity, inclusion, personal branding, a lot of personal development topics. Also coach as well, athletes and entrepreneurs, small business owners on their personal brand and leadership. Got a nonprofit called the Game Changers Foundation that I recently launched. And our whole goal is to help current and former athletes in sports, business, and life. And we do that through mentorship, community engagement, and through professional development. So we're ramping that up, getting the programming right and everything. Outside of that, I'm a musician. I grew up playing piano, drums, viola, produce. More do you want to know? Do
viola?
a lot.
Rennie, you play viola too?
Yeah, grew up playing the viola. Yeah.
Okay.
So just do a lot, do some commentating. Yeah, all that. So just here in Atlanta, got a beautiful daughter. She's 11 years old. So that's my number one job right there, is making sure that she becomes the best version of herself. And other than that, I'm a servant and child of God.
Amen. And she's also an author.
Yeah. So we wrote a book together, a children's book. And that was my way of really exposing her to entrepreneurship and also giving her the opportunity to overcome the fear of public speaking and showing her some leadership skills. So once we released the book, it's called What Does It Take to Be a Star? How to come out to elementary schools and get in front of her peers and inspire them. And so it's been great, like a great way for us to develop our relationship as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so pretty much my name is Justin Brown. I went to Penn State, University of Oklahoma. I was fortunate enough to be drafted, and like Rennie, of course had the dreams of making it to the NFL and playing a long career. but actually, my dreams were cut short. I actually was able to make it to the NFL. But shortly afterwards, I was sidelined with an injury, and that injury led to me being sidelined for the next 3 years in a row, all season-ending injuries, and it forced me to the position to where I had to really figure out who I was. Right, so I'm back home, battling through depression, anxiety, fear of that transition, and it was actually quite funny now because I was having a conversation, 2-3 years prior to that, with Antonio Brown, right, working out one time, and he was just challenging me, saying, like, who are you? Like, really, JB? And I was just like, I'm a football player. And one thing he told me, he was just like, don't let this game do that to you. So here it is, right. 3 years later, on the couch, going through the whole thing. And it actually took the words of a local business owner to challenge me to really apply the same process that I used to get to the NFL, to apply it in whatever it is that I wanted to do in the second quarter of my life. So, same thing like Rennie was touching on, personal development, reading, getting exposed to different workshops, different people that had gone through similar stories, similar transitions, allowed me to then, found my own company, Value Solutions, into what we go into different high schools. We do workshops to where I preach off of the principles, where I call my 𝗍𝗿𝗱𝘆 principles, to where we challenge the student athletes and coaches to, dive and define who they are, invest in themselves academically and physically, add value, however way that is that you add value to your community, to yourself, to your teams, and then to execute, finding a way to execute over and over again. We also do some team and organization building through what I like to do as far as through the DISC assessment. And it's a tool that's been used in organizations to help them identify, helping student athletes, helping coaches to identify, their natural strengths, talents, limitations, so that they can, be able to contribute collectively as a team into kind of achieving, some of the goals that they're trying to achieve. And also at the same time, understand those natural qualities, whether it be in decision-making, whether it be in interacting with people, the pace that you can have in those environments, and even just, maybe the back end, where it comes to, being systematic in some of those approaches. So understanding and having a grasp of that, so that not only will they be able to understand how they can continue to apply themselves on different teams, but most importantly, and Rennie can contribute to this, as far as that real transition you have to make, outside of sports, understanding those different qualities that you possess, naturally, that not only will you be able to pick the right industry, but you'll also be able to pick that right job. So a lot of personal development, really a lot of development from the neck up with student athletes and coaches. I also do coach, wide receivers specifically for personal training, but mainly just pouring back into the youth and trying to let them go further than what I did, athletically, but more importantly, above the neck, and being able to understand who they are, regardless of what sport that they play.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Love it.
And, I would hope that, in the near future, that professional leagues would have these type of opportunities for their players, that they will come to you as resources that they can actually use for their teams. And it's a part of their actual mandates, right? Because I think it's important that if you do really truly care about your players, you care about their conditioning, you care about what they're eating, you care about what the activities they're doing, you care about their training and their mental, health and all those things, then you should also be caring about, how they're actually going to survive in the NFL, how to deal with injuries when they happen, how to deal with anxiety if it were to occur, how to deal with the loss of a parent, if it's going through that, and how to definitely deal with transitioning into retirement. And I really want to end with that, because I love that both of you are very involved in not just educating our children in collegiate, realm, or the, college players, but you're also heavily involved in partnering with other players and also being a voice for them and helping them, kind of transition, and even after. Yep. What has been your experience with this group? Because this group is growing very fast for so many reasons. And we hope that, that initiatives like yours can honestly really be a part of what leads. That's what they need. They need what you're doing. And they can easily, go back and give to their athletes that play for them, to have you all come in and be a part of that. I think that is something that if a player is drafted, they should be talking about retirement.
Right.
You know, immediately, financial retirement, what they're going to be doing, how to plan that, who they need to be in their circle, who to trust. All of those things should be starting as a rookie, right? In my opinion. What has been your experience for those who are retired? Do you feel that they are making their ways and trying to start their own, nonprofits and doing the things that you are doing? Are those players have been left behind? And for whatever reason, people are not necessarily, or the league's not necessarily helping them. I think that's another, I have so many ideas, y'all. That's another thing that needs to change about the NFL is,
Right.
they need to take care of their players after. I mean, I'm very strongly opinionated about that. Being a provider of players that, have mental health and illnesses and issues and just, I guess my question is, I'm sorry, is kind of your experience in working with those who are transitioning, retired, and those who are retired.
Yeah. So as far as the NFL goes, there is a lot of work that is being done. They have a lot of workshops. They have a lot of resources available to guys that are able to play. But we got to remember that that's a super small percentage of athletes that actually make it to this level, and even a small percentage that actually even make it to more than 4 years.
Yeah.
So what happens to all these players that are going to the NFL, maybe have one tryout, and then they go back home? Nobody talks about these athletes.
Yep.
And this is the majority. This is the real life scenario. The athlete who maybe played 1-2 years, or who maybe gets hurt after their first year, or maybe doesn't even make it at all. They're just a free agent. They might get a workout. They might do rookie minicamp, and then they just in the real world, like no paycheck, no nothing. Been playing since they were 10 years old.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who really, really, truly struggle, and who nobody really talks about. Nobody. Everybody shows the video of the kid who's getting drafted in the first 2-3 rounds, and mom's crying and all is well, but nobody shows a kid who doesn't get drafted, who ain't even make it to the combine, who might have had an agent, probably doesn't, is working out barely, can afford workouts, maybe took out a loan to try to afford their workouts. Like, that's the true epidemic. And it's really sad, because when you think about it, so many of these athletes, they go through college, they don't even have the time to do an internship.
Nope.
Externship, build their network, or develop a lot of those skills, so they don't make it, and they don't get to go to the rookie symposium to even get that one time check off the box financial literacy thing. So that's what really, really kills me. And I try as much as I can to help as many of those guys as I can, but it's like being dropped off a cliff and trying to find your way, how to fly on the way down, and hopefully you figure it out before you get destroyed. But so many are falling through the cracks, or they end up right back in their hometown, and they're doing, after all this exposure, and that's what, like when I talked about the business and all those opportunities out there that they miss out on, after all that exposure, they feel like all they can do now is it's just to be a coach, like I said, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. I love coaching, but after all that, you done played in front of 90,000 people, you've been around business owners and this person and that politicians who would pick up the phone and create whatever opportunities. You didn't take advantage of that, and because you didn't have the awareness, you didn't have the information, and now you're back feeling like you have no options. Like, that's a true tragedy to me, and that's a lot of what I've seen. And then for the guys who do make it to the NFL and are able to have that 10-year career, they're able to buy. I feel like they're able to buy themselves more time, because they do have the support of different organizations, and then the money makes a difference. If you can invest in those businesses, if you can, even if you can invest in real estate, if you have a place to lay your head at night, that alone makes a huge difference when you don't have to worry about it having a mortgage. So they at least have a head start, but you're still so young. It's like having a midlife crisis at 30 years old, and sometimes younger. Yeah, that's really what it's like. So it's a major challenge for anybody. We all, no matter if you were a first round draft pick and you got to your third contract, you still go through that transition. Like, that money does not give you purpose. It doesn't define your self-worth. So if you don't know who you are, if you don't know the skills that you bring to the table, if you don't have faith, or if you've been dealing with traumas from the game, like a lot of us, our career doesn't end the way we want it to. Like it ends with a serious injury. I tore my patellar tendon. That was it, like freak accident. So yeah, once you experience it like that, there's no closure. It's like you go through a mourning stage where it's like you lost, like part of you dies. And I think I've talked to you about this before. So it's not easy for anybody going through this, especially when you think about the fact that this is something you were doing since 5 to 10 years old. So,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean it's serious because like I know for me, like I was 5 years old, you know, so and then I went from 5 years old playing every single year and never really been sitting out from a year to now 3 years in a row I can't play the sport, all because of injuries. So and like you said, as far as not even having that, you know, the resource that, okay, this is my transitional coach that I was assigned to my rookie season, and he's supposed to be able to coach me up through the next 6 months of whenever I can't play anymore, right? Like I didn't have that guidance. So, and that's why it's a good, you know, point that Rennie, you know, he touched on. He said that the money sometimes just buys you more time, right? But a lot of people they might not have those resources. So you're going from college to thinking you're going to get a check to no check at all. Now you have to figure out, okay, what am I good at? What do I want to do? I didn't have enough time in school to kind of go ahead and pursue this. I didn't have enough time to, you know, to learn how to interview, to learn how to create certain things. So now you're like behind the gun, right? And so you might get into a career, and I'm sure, you know, there's some certain stories that Rennie can share, like of certain athletes or teammates that are getting into different careers every couple of months because they have those different resources to be able to understand, okay, this is, you know, these are the different careers that I would lean towards, just going off my personality, regardless of how far I go in my career in sports, right? They didn't have that. So now you're learning it on the fly, and you might not necessarily understand how, you know, the way that you applied yourself in football or in your sport can translate, right? So, and again, you have all those years of exposure. You know how organizations are supposed to be run. You know what first class looks like. You've been in those meetings. You've been in those type of rooms. But then you go back and it's like now you feel as though, whether even being a coach, now you feel as though, you know, you can only your opportunities are limited, right? So whatever it is, instead of understanding that, you know, you can actually create your own opportunities given the exposure you've already been a part of and the connections you already have. So I think there can always be more work to be done. So that's why it's even great to get in spaces like we're on right now, right? Different, you know, like minds, just thinking about different ways to help other athletes, you know, transition better or deal with some of the trauma or some of those challenges that come, you know, during your career. So that's why this work is important for sure.
Yeah. It is. And you all are doing a fabulous job. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being on Live with Dr. Dawn 2 weeks in a row. I really do appreciate the time that you've given. Thank your families for us. Really appreciate that as well. You know, I'm here for you all, and I'll be calling you all soon when I get this company off the ground, because a lot of things that you all talked about, you know, Rennie and I talked about a little bit more, are things that can help these athletes. You know, being a mental health provider for a professional athlete has been a true honor. But it also has been a tragedy. You're exactly right, Rennie. That is the right word to use, because I just can't believe the amount of trauma that you all are exposed to and go through. And many don't identify it as trauma. They identify it as hard work or, you know, thick skin and
that's it.
This, that, and other. You know? And when it becomes a realization and how they're thinking about it and how that affects their mental state and how that can affect their mental state, then they open their eyes, they're woke, and they're like, wait a minute. I had no idea that this was something I've been carrying on for many years as a result of my coach back in high school telling me this or doing this. And now this is still an issue. I mean, it's just so interesting, you know. But I really do appreciate all the work that you all are doing, all the work that your nonprofits are doing, you're doing as individuals that you don't get paid to do. Just your passion and your drive, knowing what the experience has been like and it can be like for individuals that are of your profession. I do appreciate what you're doing. So thank you so much. Thanks for being on as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And keep it going too.
Yeah.
Definitely. This ain't gonna stop. I'm definitely going. Yes. And you all, thank you so much for joining us. For the audience, you all, thank you so much for all the questions you've had. I know that we didn't get to some of the questions, but I think that we covered a lot of topics, interesting topics, perspectives, giving you some insight as to what professional athletes, particularly NFL players, have experienced and can experience, and what they're actually exposed to. Hopefully a lot of these questions have been answered, and you've been enlightened in your learning that there are so many different sides that you don't see. And we just want to make sure that we support our professional athletes as much as possible, because they are a part of our lives. They're a part of, I know that's how I get relief and anxiety relief and all of those things. But on the other hand, your profession is it's well received, and it's aspiration, right? It's an aspiration. When you get to this point, you're well deserving, and so we're going to continue to fight with you, and all the things that you all deserve to have as being a part of this, a part of this sport. That's important. So whatever we can do to help, you let us know. And we definitely want to support your initiatives and what you all have going on too. All right. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Yes, thanks for coming. And everyone, have a great evening. Don't forget to share this live with at least 2 people you know. Make sure that they tune in. All right. Have a good night, you all. Take care.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Yeah, bye now.